So welcome to another beautiful Thursday evening here in social entrepreneurship via Zoom. Great job for all of you for presenting in the Georgetown Entrepreneurship Challenge this week. Really appreciate all your time and effort and energy to go through the pitching and presenting process. As well as working through the customer discovery process this semester and presenting your ideas. So tonight we're in for a real treat. Not going to lecture to you. I actually invited three of my best friends and amazing social entrepreneurs from the Halcyon Incubator program. We have Oscar Pedroso, the founder and CEO of Thimble, Gautam Chebrolo, the co-founder of Believe, and Danya Sherman, the founder of NoNap. So I'm gonna go ahead and actually ask all three of these entrepreneurs to take a couple of minutes to share their origin story and how they got started with their ventures. I've got a couple questions prepared because I want you to kind of hear from some real live entrepreneurs that are not too far removed from their college experience, and hopefully have them instill a little bit of wisdom and advice for you as you continue on your journey at Georgetown and certainly after you leave the hilltop as well. So with that, how about I pass it over to Oscar and let you take it away to introduce yourself and tell these kids about Thimble.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for the opportunity, Mike. And shout out to fellow Halcyon alums and Liam, because he was one of our interns, still one of our interns, despite the current crisis. But I'm the founder and CEO of an education tech company called Thimble, which teaches computer science and IT skills to middle school and high school students. We do that through a curriculum that we sell, and it includes a certain number of project-based kits. So kids learn how to build things like robots, drones, and then we provide training for teachers to help implement this in a classroom setting, makerspace, or after-school programs. And then we also have an online software that has lessons, quizzes, and all of that for teachers to also use in their classrooms. I got started as an entrepreneur through a startup weekend. If anyone's familiar with those, it's basically a 72-hour prototyping / business plan competition where you come up with an idea, and on the third day you have to present it to a group of judges. When I did it, I wasn't pitching Thimble. It was actually a previous idea that ended up failing. But at the competition, we came in third place. And I told myself at that competition that if I placed in the top 3, that I would continue on the path to create something from scratch. And so since I came in third place, I barely just made it, but it was as a result of that initial startup that led me to create Thimble. So technically I've been doing this for the last 8 years. So, but I wouldn't trade it for anything, and I've learned so much, and so I'm happy to share some of my experiences tonight.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Oscar. Danya, you want to go next and introduce yourself and the origin story for NoNap?
Sure, I'd love to. Let me make you guys all full screen so I can see you all minus Cody and Mattia. Called out. So I am Danya. I am the founder and CEO of NoNap. Created the company when I was a sophomore in undergrad, actually. Mike, is everyone freshman or a different?
Almost all freshmen and sophomore, and then Cody is our senior dark screen leader here.
Oh, awesome. So I started my company when I was literally a sophomore in undergrad. I took a college course called Women's Entrepreneurial Leadership, and my undergraduate degree was at George Washington University. I graduated this past year, class of 2019, and now I'm at Georgetown actually getting my MBA. So it's just kind of funny. I love the academic route and how much it's been able to provide in growing the company. So similar story to Oscar, was in the George Washington University's New Venture competition, didn't place first, second, or third, so he has that on me, but we got Audience's Choice Award, and that was one of the greatest validations we could have gotten. Of course, you're disappointed when you don't win, but I remember my professor at the time coming up to me and saying, Danya, you got validation from your peers. That's the greatest validation that you could get. Long story short, I ended up applying to Halcyon's Incubator program and took that immediate semester off from school and kept working on my
Before we
company.
get into the future, Danya, why don't you tell them what NoNap is?
Oh, I'd love to. That's a great question. So NoNap stands for the napkin that knows. We create cocktail napkins that are capable upon saturation of detecting date rape drug presence. So we work to empower, educate, and advocate against drug-facilitated sexual assault and crime, one napkin at a time. That is a nice little speech that I have memorized, if you can't tell. You got to have your one-liners. But yeah, that's just a little bit about the company. And I juggled when I started NoNap. I was doing 2 jobs, 5 classes, starting the company, and I also joke I had a boyfriend at the time, so it was like an extra 3 credits on top of everything else I was doing. And so time management's super important, but I'm happy to talk about the journey and now being a graduate student and continue.
Awesome, thanks so much. Gautam, you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about Believe?
Definitely. So, hey guys, my name is Gotham, like Go Thumb. I feel like a YouTuber right now. Hey guys, smash that subscribe button. But I'm one of the co-founders of Believe, where our goal is to prevent opioid abuse and addiction, or really substance abuse and addiction in general. And so what we did is so just to start off, we actually took our own personal experiences, mine and my co-founders, either personally or with our family with substance abuse. And we just decided, what could we actually do for the opioid crisis? And so it's super simple. We created a tool that pharmacists fill in their medications exactly like this in their orange prescription vial. They take our little device, they snap it on, snip it into place, take the little cap, put that in, it's good to go. Then the patient, all they have to do is enter in a pain level just like that, press dispense pill, and right there is the pill, just like that. And so we keep track of all that medication understanding, so then we give it directly to the physicians in real time. So if we see any aberrant behaviors, we can actually notify them and hopefully prevent anything from going any further. And then, and so in terms of starting entrepreneurship, so I don't know, so I mean, I graduated a couple years ago, but I actually hated entrepreneurship, and I still kind of hate entrepreneurship, but the reason why I got interested in what we're doing is not because we want to create a business, but because we just wanted to help as much as possible. We just wanted to create something of value, and that's how we went. But we can dive more into exactly how I feel about this. Don't
Awesome.
forget to comment and like.
Yeah, there we go. And actually, for the 3 presenters, you want to go ahead and put your websites in the chat box. So if any of the students want to check out your website while we're going along, we'll definitely have some time for Q&A from them at the end. And we'll kind of round robin style questions. First question I've got for you all. Let's start off with a high. What was one of the highest highs you've had as an entrepreneur? Tell us a story about one of the best things that happened. And spoiler alert, I'm going to ask for one of the lowest parts later. So be ready to ride the whole roller coaster with class tonight. Danya, you want to go first? What's one of your highest highs?
Sure. So last year, also just real fast, Gotham, can you say this, the like 10 seconds of when Mike ate the pill? Or maybe later. That's like when you go into the every time he puts the bottle on, I just think of that story, and I just think that's so amazing. But I'm happy to do it in whatever order. But okay, so I'll start there. My highest high was when I was asked by the George Washington University to pitch at a international competition through Miami last year called the Emerge Americas Conference. And I also was representing my company, my university, but also went with Yolanda Hancock, who is a Halcyon fellow as well, and she's a professor at George Washington University. So the 2 of us went as representatives. And I had no construct of what to expect at this competition. It was a conference leading up. There were 102 companies that were selected to pitch at this pitch competition. And they were in 3 tracks. One, the university, which is what Dr. Hancock, me, and I were in. And then also there were early stage and then late stage companies. And there were one representative from the university track selected to pitch at the finals, and then 2 from the other 2 tracks. But the coolest part for me was that one of the judges, his name is Armando Perez. If anyone knows who that is, that's Pitbull. So
Mr. Worldwide, Mr. 305.
Mr. Worldwide, Mr. 305. And so I've pitched in front of hundreds of people in all different situations, dare I say thousands, especially in taking audiences into account. But I remember going from the one competition to the next tier and making it through all the way to the finals as the one representative of the university track. Granted, there were 102 companies, dwindled down to 5, and I was one of those 5, the youngest person there and also the only woman founder. Prior to taking the stage, Pitbull comes back and does a wave to the entrepreneurs. And I'm thinking to myself, Danya, keep your shit together. You are going out to pitch your company, and you've practiced this a million times. You go out there and you pitch because he's just another person. And I waved in the back, like, hey, it's me. Long story short, I pitched first. The other 4 companies pitched after. When it came time to give the award, his intro to the award was, we've selected the company to win this competition that we believe everyone can understand and that will make the greatest impact. And then announced my company as the winner. And it was one of those moments where I got to go up, not only get kissed by Pitbull, but also get the validation that what we're doing is something that he even recognizes the importance in. And even to just be able to have that connection so that we down the road can potentially have a business relationship is huge. But also I got kissed by Pitbull, and that is so cool. So I think that's one of the really big highs, and just overall the validation.
That's pretty legit. And I'd say you've been through probably dozens of pitch competitions at this point, right? So most of my students just went through their first pitch competition this week. And I want them too to understand, this is something you have to do over and over and over again. And not just rough. With one idea. When you get a new idea, you're going to have to pitch it over and over and over again. And maybe by the 20th or 50th time, you get some celebrity to be like, yeah, you're legit. Here's some money.
Not even celebrity status too, though. I think for me, I've pitched so many times, and you have to understand, judges look for different things. So you have to just walk away with the awareness that you did your best in the moment. You represented yourself to the best you could be, and just take pride in that. So yeah.
Oscar, we'll pass the mic over to you. Do you want to share a great success story from your thimble journey?
Yeah, for sure. For us, it was definitely our Kickstarter campaign. For those of you who are unaware of Kickstarter, it's a crowdfunding platform where you can take an idea and get your friends, family, and strangers to back the idea in exchange for the product or service that you plan to launch at some point. So when we did this, my co-founder Dave and I were at a fork at a road. Basically, we were pretty much either going to do a private beta for the business or go big or go home and do this Kickstarter. We only had a limited amount of funds in our bank account, so we went with the Kickstarter because we thought we could get a ton of eyeballs on this, and if it didn't work, then at least we found out very quickly whether the idea was viable. And so our goal was to sell $25,000 on Kickstarter, and the way we came up with that number was we talked to our manufacturer and asked him how many kits we needed to produce for it to make business sense, and it came to about $25,000. We spent about 4 months preparing for the campaign. We did a video. We included all of our friends and family to basically become stage actors for shooting the video. And then we went ahead and launched it in late 2015. And then we ended up doing $300,000 in pre-orders in about 60 days. And for us, that was such a surprise. We had never, ever in a million years thought that we would ever have that kind of traction. And so it was just nice to be able to have that validation, especially from real customers who really, I mean, we had our friends and family who knew us, but obviously that maybe was $10,000 of the campaign, and the remaining $290,000 were people who actually identified with the idea and the concept and ended up buying a product, so we ended up delivering on the campaign a year later. It took us a year to deliver it just because of the size of the campaign, and we just weren't expecting the number of orders to come in through that, and we made a lot of mistakes as well. So originally we were hoping we would deliver on the campaign in 4 months, but that ended up taking us 8 months longer to do that.
What were a couple of the mistakes? And we actually had a class earlier this semester about like supply chain logistics and social entrepreneurship math and like how to move physical things around. What was one or two of the big lessons learned?
I think for us, well, so because our product is hardware, like our first kit was a Wi-Fi robot, and Dave was pretty confident that he had all the schematics and the designs and the prototyping and the testing was 100%, and it wasn't. And since we were manufacturing with a company out in China, there was a lot of back and forth communication. We actually never went there just because we couldn't afford it, but it was possible to do everything we needed to do through video chat. But that was just one of the mistakes, is just not double checking our work, and then not expecting how long the lead times would be for us to receive product from China. We thought it was like 2 months. It actually ended up being more like 4 to 6 months, especially during the Chinese New Year, which usually falls around January and February. So that just delayed the project even more. But it's a good thing that it happened early on, because we ended up creating a production schedule that allowed us to make timely orders that didn't create that size or that big of a delay.
Nice. Awesome. And I'm sure we'll have some more mistakes, lessons learned we can cover throughout tonight's discussion. Gautam, I will pass the mic over to you. Why don't you tell us one of the most exciting stories in the Believe journey?
Yeah, actually, I'll do. I'm not trying to suck up or anything, but getting into Halcyon was a big one. Ref.
What is Halcyon actually? I think I've heard the word before, but most of my
Yeah.
students aren't actually that familiar. You want to tell them a little bit about it?
It's this really obscure organization. It's super chill. It's like in this hole in the wall in DC. It's like super cool, but it's actually I don't know. I don't know if I'm gonna do a great job explaining it.
This is an example of word of mouth marketing, which we've also been over this semester, where somebody else tells the story. So we'll hear.
Yeah, so it's a nonprofit organization that that oversees a lot of different programs, but essentially what I see it as is a way to promote social good in different platforms. So they have an incubator program that helps social entrepreneurs, and that was the first premier program that we're all three a part of. Then they also have the Arts Fellowship, the By the People Arts Festival, some arts workshops. What else? There are a couple other things, but essentially expanding the realm of doing good through different functions, I think. All right. All right. Yeah. So the reason why Halcyon was so great for us is just because it goes back to what Danya and Oscar were kind of saying, is like getting that validation of trying to figure out who's actually believing in you. Because at the point when we got into Halcyon, no one believed in us. My mom didn't believe in me. My dad didn't believe in me. My girlfriend was just like, "Oh, when are you gonna get a job?" kind of thing. And I was working 5 different jobs. I was working like in an ice cream shop, rock climbing wall. I was just like piecing together things, and I could barely make rent. Like I was maybe like $50 away from not making rent. And so things just didn't seem as if they were going well. And then Halcyon came through, and they're just like, "Yo, we think you guys have an awesome idea. It might not be all the way there, but we can help you make it there." And so that was huge for me. And kind of in that same line, after we got out of Halcyon, we still had a lot of issues raising money, because we were like, we have a hardware device. Oscar can tell you, hardware takes a buttload of money. And that's why they did a Kickstarter. They needed to do that Kickstarter because they needed all that money. And so we couldn't even get like a couple $1,000s But then after we went through Mass Challenge, which is an accelerator based out of Boston, our first checks, our first 3 checks actually, were all from other companies, like people from other companies, and they had their own things to worry about and they had their own money, but they saw how we were grinding every single day, just day in and day out, and they just really liked what we were doing. And so they spent their money that they could have spent on their business and spent it on us. And that was huge for us. So that was a huge high for us, and I'll leave it at that.
Gautam, you touched on a great concept there of the grind. Tell me a little bit more about the grind, and what is it like day in and day out? How many hours are you working? What kind of bullshit tasks are you doing? How many times do you get thanked on an average day? What's this grind like? And I'd love Danya and Oscar to chime in too about the grind.
Yeah, you mean like hashtag hustle every day, grind 24/7, 365 nonstop. Um, I actually have very strong opinions about the grind culture too. Like that's a whole nother topic, but I think it gets glorified too much because we talk about how we're constantly working, and it's what we see in entrepreneurship, especially on Instagram, like Gary Vaynerchuk and like that entire you've seen all those Instagram posts of just like always hustling, always working, always doing things. Um, it's kind of hard to say because it changes every single day. And I realized coronavirus was actually personally good for me in a work setting, like not like ignoring everything else. For my personal work, because I'm not answering emails 20 million times a day just to answer like these little random things, I can actually focus on some of the work and just get it done. I don't want to take too much time. I want to hear what Oscar and Danya, because I don't think I have a good answer to
Okay.
this.
Danya or Oscar, you want to add in? And I definitely want to double click on what Gautam said of not like making it seem so grand that like you got to be killing yourselves to be killing it and crushing it on social media. More just like, what does it take? And we're going to get into positive like lifestyle choices and like boundaries and things like that.
Yeah, I think Mike, that like what you just said absolutely resonates, and Gautam kind of put his thumb on it, in addressing the importance of really prioritizing self, because I see the grind as waves. When things come on, and especially when you're managing a lot of different issues and people, and really making sure that everything's going well, you need to not only be prioritizing what you're doing, but also yourself. At the end of the day, you're only human. And when you're not doing well, like business wise, you won't be doing well either. But again, what I mean by also that things come in waves is that it just so happens that everything will come up in like 2-week chunks. And it will be 2 weeks of craziness, and then you'll have 2 weeks of not so craziness, and then 1 week of just insanity, and then 3 weeks of really light work. So it's really just prioritizing that during those light times you're thinking ahead. But that's what we've been able to do. And I think that's really attributed to my ability to not burn out. Whereas I have a lot of friends where if you're grinding and grinding and grinding every day from 6 a.m. until 10 p.m. and all you live, breathe, and eat and do everything is your company, it's really easy to burn out and lose focus of what you're doing. So, Oscar, have you had a similar experience or very different?
Yeah, I mean, it varies. I think my grind changes on a daily basis. Yeah, I went from, you guys saw that headset I was wearing. I was making like 40 to 50 calls a day, calling school administrators, which is not fun to begin with. So you almost have to like mentally prepare yourself to be in that state of grind where you're like, all right, I'm going to be making a lot of calls and people are going to say yes, maybe, and no. And the no's are the worst. But then you throw in like a pandemic into the mix and your grind is going to change, obviously. And now instead of calling schools, because schools are clearly closed for the time being, I'm now trying to think of creative ways to get our product in front of parents who are trying to get their kids interested in science and technology activities while they're home from school. And so that changes dramatically. I mean, a complete 180 from what I was doing earlier. And I mean, Liam was part of that experience because he was helping me send out emails and making calls to schools. And that was like 2-3 weeks ago. And, so like the grind changes based on what's going on around you. For me personally, I get in the zone, and it's something that obviously every entrepreneur needs to do. I'm sure you'll hear the expression "get shit done." That's basically what it means to be hard and grinding at work. So yeah.
Yeah, I love it, Oscar. And by the way, I had a call today with William Casper. He says, "What's up?" and has enjoyed
Good.
working with you on the sales side.
Yes.
We're going to get him doing a sales skill series for fellows on April 21st. So I'll send that info
Cool.
out to all of you once we get it up. But yeah, so we've talked about the level of effort and the work that goes into it. I'm curious for the three panelists, how has this impacted your personal relationships? Relationships with family, friends, significant others? How do you communicate with them? Do they get it? Likely they don't get it. What is that like? And how have you found maybe like social emotional support throughout this journey? Oscar, do you want to go
I'm
first?
happy to go first. Yeah. For me, it was, I mean, my mom still thinks I'm crazy, but I think seeing the Kickstarter and the pivot to selling to schools, getting into programs like Halcyon, where she can see other people believe in this and parents are buying this, schools are buying this. I think eventually she's just trying to protect me. She's like, I want you to have healthcare insurance, and so it comes from a place of love. She's never doubted me by any means. I would say it's more for me, my immediate family, like my mom, dad, and brother, for them to have them close. And also my significant other, Steve, who's been amazing. He's been there since the very beginning, from the idea stage when we hadn't sold anything. And then I would say, like, with friends, it's difficult because a lot of them have moved away. So I haven't really been in touch with everyone, but they know what I'm doing, obviously, by seeing things on social media. But still, I feel like with some friends, I've grown distant because I'm so immersed in work. And but I do try to change that. And in fact, with this whole COVID thing, I've done a few Zoom chats with some old friends. We've done some happy hours, just catching up on how things are going. It's actually been refreshing because, I mean, I don't have that much work that I'm going to be stuck to my computer the whole time, but having that work-life balance and just maintaining those relationships has been super helpful, because without those key people in your life to keep you well balanced, it's hard. Like it's hard when, like, we were just talking about our high highs, but some of our lowest lows, it just brings you down tremendously. And having some kind of gateway to just express those feelings to someone, it can be difficult if you don't have those people there for you. So yes, definitely important.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. Danya, you want to go next?
Yeah, I can. I think, unlike a lot of my peers, I have been very fortunate that we've been able to keep operations going during this time. And my connection with people at this point, and specifically my entrepreneurial friends, has really been supporting them, having them call me. And I have a lot of friends that have stopped working on their companies right now because they can't afford to keep working, or that they file for unemployment and keep working on their companies alongside just so they can keep going. And I mean, as Oscar kind of said, there's a lot of uncertainty, especially during times of pandemic. And it's just really important to be a good friend to the people around you that are struggling, because while I see it, I'm really fortunate that I'm at a point that we will be okay, but a lot of my friends are not necessarily in that point and don't know necessarily when this will change. Specifically, one of my friends I'm thinking of has a company that works with airports. Airports are really suffering right now. I have another friend that works with restaurants. I mean, restaurants are really suffering. So it's just really important to be a good friend. And I've personally found I've been having a lot more deep conversations with the people I otherwise lost touch with, and just being able to really build the foundation of those friendships back to what they were, taking that time to really appreciate those relationships. has added a lot of value to me over the last few weeks, especially with me being stuck at home with my family. So it's good to add people to the repertoire of my daily minutia.
Nice. And Gotham, how about you? How have you balanced relationships and things outside of work?
Yeah, I mean, first I'd like to echo exactly what Oscar was saying. Like your the relationships that you have, like especially like familial relationships, they really just are trying to look out for you. And so literally even yesterday, my dad was like, "Hey, so when are you going to med school?" Or something like, "When are you studying for the MCAT?" or stuff like that. And of course, like they just want to have security, and they don't they don't see this as successful until someone else verifies that it's successful. So like when Forbes says, "Oh, like this is cool, like this is a cool thing that someone's working on," then they can kind of understand and latch onto it. But it's like you just have to clog through a couple of different things before you even get to that point. But in terms of general relationships, like I don't know if it's necessarily just a general entrepreneurship thing or if it's a general society thing that's happened recently of people are becoming just more and more isolated. And the way I've dealt with that so far is just listen to a lot of sad boy music like Joji or Clairo or Billie Eilish. Of course, Billie Eilish is the best. But I think it's funny because I ended up like just like what everyone else is doing is like talking to a couple other friends, and no matter what they're doing, like even if they seem so successful on Instagram or like even if they feel like they got their consulting job, like the people who were at Goldman Sachs or Bain or McKinsey or all these like big firms or even in med school, every single one seems like they're lonely for some reason. Like all of us are saying that we just feel a little alone, and so I think it's more of a general society thing. So I think um, I want to the point of me saying that is that I don't have a lot of friends that are entrepreneurs, to be perfectly honest, but there's so much that we go through that is actually very similar to people who take maybe more traditional paths. And I think if we recognize that, we can come together a lot more and we can talk about our struggles and understand each other. I'll say that.
I'm back. Sorry, my internet is not the best, but I would love to popcorn over the next question. And I've got two more questions, and then students, we're going to have about 10 minutes for Q&A from you. So if you do have any questions, feel free to start typing them in the chat box, and we can get into those shortly. First question for each of you: what is one skill you did not learn in a college classroom that you use pretty consistently as an entrepreneur and would recommend that my students invest in developing?
I could say pitching. Being able to talk to anyone at any point about anything is really important, and that's not something I learned in any of my classes. And it's really just putting yourself in uncomfortable situations and striving to daily. That's when growth happens. So that's what I would say.
Yeah. Personally, so I'm an engineer. I studied biomedical and electrical engineering, and I'm a CTO, so I do all the tech stuff. 90% of what I do on a daily basis, I never learned in class. Even though I'm an electrical engineer and I'm doing stuff with hardware, none of it. I would say pretty much just like practice building things in the sense of you just want to create something, find out what software skills you need to know, or even if you don't need to know software skills, there's so much big no code movement. I would say other than that, I would say design, because I think this goes to Danya's point of pitching and selling, because you want to be able to project an idea before that idea is even built. And so if you learn basic Illustrator, Photoshop skills, you can actually create the vision and sell people on the vision before it actually exists. And I think that's a huge, huge thing. So anything design related or Illustrator, Adobe Illustrator.
Yeah, there's so many things. It's a tough question to answer, but I would say sales. Even just getting on the phones and knowing how to sell an idea to someone who might not have any idea what you do. It takes practice. I'm sure there are some sales courses, but I never took them. I was a math and econ major, but that takes a lot of practice over time, and even just getting comfortable with it. I don't even think it's something you could teach. Like you can teach someone like basic steps you would need to do for effective sales. When actually Liam joined as an intern, I was like, "Hey man, you're probably not taking any of these courses at school, so you're gonna learn how to sell." So, but yeah, I would say that's probably one of the big skills, even just, I was bartending at a restaurant while I was working on Thimble during the day, and even just getting comfortable selling, making drinks for people. I mean, I consider that sales experience because you it's a more of like a psychological thing where you're asking questions, trying to get to know the people, build relationships, and a lot of sales is relationships and knowing when to close the sale as well. So
Yeah,
yeah,
that's a great point. I love it. And so one last question before we dive into the comments. What is one of the best books you've ever read? I've got a few great ones back here. I've got some more right here that I'm actively working on. And all of my students have to read a book by the end of the semester and give a book report presentation in a couple weeks. So I'm curious for the fellow panelists, what's one book you might recommend them to read outside of the classroom, maybe over the summer?
I chuckle when I hear this. I can jump in. I hate to read. I very much dislike it, and that's not the way that I learn. So I would say read books. That's very important. Professor Malloy will tell you. I would say instead for me, and make sure you take that time to reach out to the people that inspire you and have a conversation. Maybe it's the author of the book and you just reach out and say, I'd want to address this, or having those one-on-one conversations, you learn, at least for me, I learn way more than just reading. And I'm not the type of learner that is a great reader. I am a great absorber of information in person. But that's not the answer that Professor Malloy was looking for, so I'll pass it on to Oscar and Gotham.
Yeah, for me, I've read a few books. I read a lot more when I was first starting Thimble, not so much now. But the last book that I recently read is "You Can't Teach a Kid to Ride a Bike at a Seminar" by David Sandler, and it's a sales book. And my friends think I have no life when I read these kinds of books. They'll open it, they'll look at a paragraph, and they'll read it to my face, and like, "This is what you're reading." But I don't know. For me, it's something that I can apply to my work on a daily basis. So, yeah, there's one for you.
Awesome. And Danya, to your point, I did put something in the chat here, a link to slides on how to do informational interviews. So for folks that don't want to learn via books, there's some great resources on how to set up a coffee chat or a one-on-one Zoom conversation or phone call with somebody that you think is smart or has a job that you might want to have at some point in life. Give them a little bit of flattery and ask them some good questions about how they got to where they are in their career. They might have some good advice that doesn't necessarily require reading books. Gotham, what you got?
Yeah, sorry, I'm with Donnie. I haven't read a book in 10 years, to be legitimate, or to be authentic. But I mean, I want to read books. There's so many times where I've started books. So I will say, one thing I did like was Outliers. I know that's very cliche, but Outliers was good. The thing what I do right now is I listen to a lot of long form kind of information. So like Joe Rogan, you think what you want of Joe Rogan, but Joe Rogan is amazing, absolutely amazing. And so Oxford also does these really great talks. And I don't know what you guys think about Steve Bannon, but like if you hate Steve Bannon to a T, like absolutely hate him, you should watch his talk that he did with Oxford, and you'll start understanding a lot of why he thinks. And I think that's changed my perception so much about the world. It's not about snippets that we get in the media or how other people tell us to think, but it's like coming straight from someone's reasoning. That's what I suggest.
Awesome. And Gotham, I don't know half the people or things you just referenced. So if you want to follow up with an email with that stuff, I'd love to share that out with my students and give it a listen, as well as currently in hibernation mode for the foreseeable future. So jumping into some questions from the students, Clara was curious, how did you learn about business techniques like marketing, supply chain management, partnerships, etc., if you had no business experience?
For me, it was just surrounding myself with people who knew or had experience regarding some of those things. So it was encouraged early on for me to build a small board of advisors with people who had various skills or areas of expertise related to a variety of things. And for us, it was important for people to have skills in education, sales, manufacturing, supply chain. So every year I refresh that board of advisors to reflect any changes that we're having in the business. That's been one way. A lot of things I've taught myself just through trial and error, and building a network of people. Obviously, I've had people who have looked over some of that work and been able to give me some really good feedback. So there's a little bit of that. And then obviously once you're able to hire a team, then you start to bring on people who are experts in that specific area that you really need help with.
Yeah, I second that. It's also for me making a lot of mistakes along the way, and it's just the journey. But on Oscar's point, really learning from other people's mistakes and just having that conversation and the humility to say, this is the issue that is going on for me right now. What did you do? And can you give me any shared experiences?
Yeah. The exact thing. I mean, like a couple months ago, I went to China and I had no understanding of what supply chain management was. I was just like, let's figure this out. And so, again, like asking whoever is in your network, because someone always has an answer or someone knows how to do it. And you just keep asking people to connect you and you get connected and you will find it. Just like coronavirus is spreading from one person to one person, you ask questions, those questions spread, and you can pretty much get everyone.
Yeah, that's great advice, Gautam. I actually had one of the fellows today, Ronit, just out of the blue ask me, who's the smartest person you know in AR and VR and the smartest person you know in cybersecurity? She's like, I don't need an introduction yet. I'm just trying to find who are the smart people that are friends of friends that I might be able to talk to. And so next question we've got is, how did you find people to join your team? And if you don't have friends who wanted to work with you, how do you recruit? And I'll throw in the question, if you don't have any money to pay people, how do you recruit? So any advice on team building?
Yeah, we use, so I mean, we didn't use as much equity. We got lucky because one of my friends, he wasn't really doing anything either. And so he just jumped on board and helped us out with the tech stuff. And he was like one of the smartest dudes I've ever met. And so he helped us out. But um, at the end of the day, you have to make sure that someone has skin in the game. So our tech team actually came from one of our investors. So he had his own company. He decided that he wanted to invest in us, but the way that he thought about it was that as an opportunity. So he invested 10K in us, but then later down the line, he was like, "Oh, I could sell them my tech services." And so it kind of came, that actually helped us out a lot because he gave us a discounted rate. And so he benefited because he actually got extra money and extra job work. But we, that's how we did it. So.
For me, I posted stuff. I created job postings and put them on social media and basically asked people if they knew anyone that would be interested in a particular position. I found my co-founder on Hacker News, which is an online tech website where you can find topics on the latest technology trends. And then I've also worked through local universities to be able to find interns that can help. Again, Liam. But usually university programs will have amazing programs where if they'll get businesses to recruit students and the universities will pay for their time. At least that was one university in New York, and we were able to get 6 students like that, 6 interns, which helped us out with product development, sales, marketing. I mean, anything you needed, they would vet that talent for you. So I would take advantage, especially at Georgetown or any other universities in the area. That's also a really good way to recruit interns or talent.
Yeah, there's definitely like Georgetown startup career fairs. We had one a couple months ago, and Halcyon will usually have one in September, assuming we're back to civilization as we used to know it in the fall. We'll have an intern fair. If not in September, then maybe we'll do one in January or February. And I'll be sure to invite all of you all if you want to come over and meet the new social entrepreneurs and see what you can do. And Liam actually had a question too about what is the current target market for NoNap? Is it direct to consumer, restaurants? And what are you hoping to accomplish in the next year?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So we're actually going to be launching a Kickstarter campaign. So Oscar, I'm gonna hit you up in a little bit. And we will initially be more consumer driven, but also long-term working with bars, clubs, universities to provide them for students. at GW, health centers gave out condoms, and I was so surprised when I went to Georgetown's health center that they don't give out condoms. I thought that was really fascinating. As a Jesuit university, it makes sense. But it's just interesting if you look at the business application for us, how do we reach out to make sure that our product is as accessible to the consumer, i.e. college and dating age individuals, as much as possible. We're actually taking interns for the term, so if you're super fascinated by what we're saying for the summer term, so feel free to hit me up, and Mike has my contact. I'm happy to continue that conversation. So great question.
ABR, always be recruiting. Great job. And Kate was curious, what advice would you give to current college students who are interested in entrepreneurship?
I would say just do it. That's so funny and like such a stupid thing to say. But I when I first came up with my idea and I pitched it actually at my first competition, someone came up to me, one of the judges, came up to me and told me that my idea was stupid and that it was going to fail and that he was doing me a favor by telling me to stop. And I say that because it's really important to know a lot of people are going to be naysayers, especially in the beginning. And it's just staying steadfast to your vision, being open to feedback from people that are providing constructive feedback, but also being able to say thank you so much for your feedback and walk away and not take it to heart. So that's what I would say. Just keep working on your vision, stay true to who you are and what you know you can accomplish, and people will be attracted to that.
Yeah, I would also say don't do entrepreneurship just to do entrepreneurship. I think that's something that I personally got out of it, because I still kind of hate entrepreneurship, because I think people conflate it with ideas, and now like anyone who's selling t-shirts out of the back of their van is an entrepreneur. And I don't think that's necessarily the way that I feel it should be. It should be like, if you have this idea or you want to create this change in the world or create value for someone else, then you go for that. But if there's no necessarily need for it, but you just want the label of entrepreneur, then I don't think that's necessarily why what's going to push you. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you're already on the right path by taking this class, and Mike's an amazing dude. So, and if you think about it, he's over at Halcyon, which is where a lot of things, all entrepreneur things related, happen. So if you really, really want to get into entrepreneurship, just go where the activity is. Go to meetups. Halcyon throws a bunch of events. You'll usually meet like some of the most amazing people there who are building all different types of companies. And then if you have an idea, we all start with an idea and talking about what if, or what about this problem. And really quick, my even before I started a company, my friend was, when I was in college, was trying to get me to start a business with him. He was trying to create a crematorium, which is terrible. And he was trying to call it Holy Smokes. And I was just like, why would you do something like this? It just doesn't make any sense. And I actually helped him do some of the market research to figure out whether this was a viable business idea. And it turns out that the county that he lived in just didn't have enough deaths. And it was just, I mean, that was like the first time I really like considered like, could entrepreneurship be something I want to do? Definitely not a crematorium, but you just never know where you're going to start. But after that, I ended up taking a class in entrepreneurship, reading a bunch of books, and then finally one day I came up with, I really, all my background's in education. So that's another thing I would mention too, is maybe you want to intern or work for a startup company just to get like the feel for what that environment is like, because sometimes it's not for everyone. So maybe get a little experience doing that, and then test the waters little by little. And it's especially in something that you love to do. I would say no matter what, make sure it's something that you are really passionate about, because again, like if for me, like it's education tech related, so I'm very passionate about the education space. I don't know that I would feel the same way about a fintech company.
Yeah, I think that's great advice, Oscar, too, about interning and working at startups and like getting experience as the 5th or 6th employee, where you have to wear 7 different hats and learn all these skills that you don't already know how to do. And if you're like a level 4 at something and everybody else in the company is a level 1 or level 2, you're suddenly the expert. And that's kind of been the case for me in like Zoom conferencing this month. You know, I'm now a Zoom expert, even though my internet craps out from time to time. And so I think just being willing to try new things and see what it's like in an environment as opposed to like a consulting or banking job where you just work a lot and climb this corporate ladder and wear fancy dress clothes and don't sleep very much. Like, I don't think that's a lot of fun. There's a lot of money there, but I heard a quote earlier today actually from William Casper, Oscar, who said, if all you want to do in life is make a lot of money, it's not that hard to make a lot of money. My hope though is that for all of you, you don't just want to make a lot of money, you also want to have positive impact in the world and have healthy relationships and hobbies and skills that you can learn and enjoy life outside of just working 24/7. And so with that, panelists, I will give you each maybe 15 to 30 seconds if you want to wrap up any closing words of wisdom, favorite quotes, or last thoughts to leave the students with before they get the next 2 weeks off. Or at least we don't have class next week, so you've got 2 weeks until we come back.
I'll go first. Take this time to really just think about what it is that you want to do. I know that's a very general statement, but learn a new skill. I taught myself how to program, not in this period of time, but when I've had downtime, I've used those times to create opportunities for myself to learn something new. For those of you that are really interested, I know there's a ton of resources online for entrepreneurship. One of them is YC Startup School, which is like I think it's an 8 to 12 week program online that teaches you all things entrepreneurship. And they have a lot of interviews where they interview founders, and they're all really good stories, some not so good stories, some unicorn billionaire companies that have come out of it. Yeah, and just stay focused, and you're going to pivot a lot. You're going to do a lot of things right and a lot of things wrong. Just hang in there. And I think at the end, the entrepreneurs that are most successful are the ones that stick in it no matter what. Yeah, because that resilience, you definitely need it for this path. It's definitely hard stuff.
Thank you so much, Oscar. Danya, you want to go next? And then we'll wrap it up with Gotham.
Sure. I would say, like, I echo what Oscar's saying. During this time of like space, there really hopefully won't come a period where we'll really get this much isolation. So instead of seeing it as a drag, and hopefully you are practicing social distancing, but instead of seeing it as a drag, seeing it as something where you can reconnect with yourself or what you've lost touch with. Me, for one, I started knitting again. I feel like a grandma, but it's something that has helped me just kind of get back to Zen, and again, reconnecting with friends that I've lost touch with, investing in those relationships, staying with the grind, but also acknowledging there's more. And I've been doing a lot more cooking. So finding things that give you back energy instead of just constantly being expensing it into the universe, which especially as freshmen, sophomores, juniors, and also especially seniors, there won't come a time in the near future where you'll get this much freedom to just do whatever in the confines of your own space. So really take advantage of that and make sure not to screw up. And on Zoom calls, always know your camera's on. If it's on, there have been too many faux pas. Please don't do that too. So just be safe and careful and healthy.
Thank you. And Gotham, closing remarks?
Yeah, so first, I have to get out of the way. Jaden Smith is criminally underrated. Number two, pretty much echoing exactly what Oscar and Danya said, take advantage of this time. My school actually gave me access to lynda.com, and Lynda has literally anything you want to learn. It has almost professional videos that you can actually learn those. So it's also called LinkedIn Learning. They upgraded it, but I would suggest that. And hit me up if you ever want to talk about Kanye or anything. Honestly, I'm lonely. Not really, but yeah. Thank you so much for listening, and that's it.
Awesome.
Mike, would it be helpful for us to put our contacts in?
Yeah, if you want to put your contacts in the chat, that sounds great. And I'll send out an email probably in the morning just to recap the discussion and share the video. And class, I hope you have a great week next week. Enjoy the Easter break. We'll be back here 7 o'clock on Thursday in 2 weeks to go over the Clifton Strengths results. And then by the 23rd of April, you got 3 weeks. Book reports are due. It'll be a 5-minute video. You just email to me and like a 1 to 2 page written report. And that's it for now. I'm just going to wrap up with a little bit of jam session as you take your time to log off tonight after a great panel chat. I'm really, 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 really thankful that the fellows came to share their stories. And it's okay that I don't know how to sing, but I can jam decently well on the uke. Good night. Peace out. A-Town down.